Hey guys, this is Markuis for CardRunners.com, and today I'm going to be making a video at 100 NL on stars. And I started off the footage playing this guy Rubish on 3 tables, and he said he was going to play for a little while, so I thought that it would be good for footage, but it turns out he left kind of early, so most of the video is me hopping around on tables and playing various opponents, and there's some downtime, and I'll try and just fast forward through the parts that seem a little bit boring. I think I play Bad Player Ever for a little while. Never played either of these players. As you can see, I've got 64 hands on Rubish and 27 hands on Bad Player Ever, so nothing to go on. So bottom left, I raise jacks and I check back on Ace King 6, pretty standard. I'll probably check back this turn and call a river bet / bet myself to check 2. I think this is a spot where it's good for 1 bet, and I'm not too afraid of giving a free card, so I don't mind just trying to put in that bet on the river and give him a chance to catch up or bluff. If he bets into me, I'll probably call down, to be honest, because I think a lot of players in his shoes check an ace on the turn here, and you don't get trips that often, so I'd probably call down early on in a match. And something I've said many times before is that when I don't really know how my opponent's playing, I tend to really try and favor going to showdowns and not make too many big folds, not make too many really thin value bets, or make too many plays which really rely on my opponent having certain tendencies. So in this spot, I wouldn't call down if someone really wasn't bluffing too much, but against an unknown opponent, I assume that someone's going to be bluffing too much when I check back flops. Okay, so top right, I check call the turn with 6-9, which is, I could bet the turn for sure, but I think check calling's perfectly fine, and I'll check raise this river. I just don't have any bluffs in my leading range. I think he checks back this river a lot because he probably doesn't have Queen X checking back the flop too much, and it's unlikely he has a 9 when I've got a 9, so he probably has a lot of stuff like pocket 7s, pocket 8s, maybe some bluffs that give up, and basically a lot of stuff that checks back, but I just don't have much of a turn check calling range that's going to bluff this river. If I had a draw of any type, I would just lead on the turn or check raise, and I wouldn't turn ace X into a bluff here or anything like that. So I think checking with the acknowledgement that it's going to get checked through quite a bit is probably the best play. Bottom left is somewhat interesting just in the sense that I don't think he has a very strong hand, and I think he occasionally has ace X. It could be a spot to consider turning my hand into a bluff to get him off of ace X or queen X, but I think that's kind of optimistic, and I'd probably have to overbet. But basically, it's just a spot where I don't think he's very strong, so it's worth considering putting in a bet. And bottom left, it's also kind of a gin card for him to bluff with his busted stuff, so him checking kind of makes me think he might have showdown value, and he probably beats me. So it's worth considering bluffing with jacks here. I don't think I would in this spot because it's probably pretty high up in my range, and if I start bluffing with jacks, I probably bluff a bit too often when check 2 in this spot. And he did have 9-7, so a hand like that tells me that he's probably leading turns too often when I check back flop, so I won't go for too many delayed c-bets, and I'll make a lot of late call downs because I don't think that's a great lead on the turn. And he didn't bluff the river, which is somewhat surprising. If that's going to be a common tendency of his to just take one stab and give up, it's definitely something I want to know. So top right, I'll just check raise, and I'm surprised he bet. I think he probably has air here quite a bit when he bets, occasionally another 9. But I still want to check raise because he can have, something like jacks or 10s that goes for somewhat thin value, maybe check back a weak queen. There are some worse 9s for the most part. If he's got a 9, he's got me beat though. But I think it's still a check raise. And, if he has air, I'd still rather check raise, I think, because he'll probably snap fold and tell me he had air, and that won't be too revealing. But in his mind, I'll put a little bit of doubt. Maybe I pulled a move on him. And I think that's always something that's good to make your opponent sort of feel like you might be pulling moves on him. So bottom right, I just check down 10-4. I think that's pretty standard. He checks down king high, also reasonably standard. Bottom left, I usually check back in this spot, but I think betting it from time to time is fine. You definitely don't want to be someone who just always checks back a second or third pair because it defines your range pretty well, and it also makes your c-betting range kind of bluff heavy if you're c-betting with a reasonable frequency. because if you're only c-betting top pair in air, you're going to have quite a bit of air.